My task is to introduce and excite you about e-portfolios. How many of you have heard of e-portfolios? Wow, my is done. Okay. But in what context have you heard about e-portfolios? How many of you have portfolios? Yes.
Concerning the Frank here at PSU.
Oh. How was the experience for you?
It was okay.
Okay.
I'm excited about it.
And by yourself?
I've had two experiences. One was in high school photography. We set up an e-portfolio, but that was pretty much just like a practice kind of thing, teaching you how to do it. And then later on, I had a class that focused more on like managing your online presence, so your social medias, things like that. Not posting pictures you don't want future bosses to see.
That's right.
So that's my experience with it.
And others? How many have a portfolio that they're really proud of? So I'll start by telling you how I got into this. I'm a social psychologist, and I study the factors that help people have more access to who they are. In this case, more access to their intelligence, right? So I make a fundamental belief that we are almost infinitely intelligent, and that if we're not able to access it, that there are factors that get in the way. And our task is to figure out what are those factors. So in as much as we can figure them out, we can engage them and get them out of our way. That, in a nutshell, is my life, the kinds of stuff that I think about. So why portfolios? I started in this program almost 20 years ago, and we had the practice of doing portfolios, but it was the paper-based portfolios. And at that point, we have a year-long program that has all of these goals. I'm going to describe your experience a little bit. We have a year-long program that has these goals of inquiry, critical thinking, ethics and social responsibility, diversity, and communication. And within communication, you have all communication and quantitative literacy communication. And then we have all these themes. So as a first year student, what was your theme?
Work of art.
Work of art, right? So we have the goals of the course, work of art, along with the goals of the program, those 4 goals that I just listed. So for our students, it's very, very difficult to hold on to so many, sometimes they're almost like competing goals. So often we hear, what is this all about? What am I doing here? You very often will hear, how is this connected to my major? And so on and so forth. So very quickly, the faculty participating in this space realizing that coherence making, holding all of this stuff together, had to be a critical component of the curriculum, hence the portfolio. And since many of our faculty were English faculty, they brought in or they imported portfolio strategies that came from literature and English, so they were used to doing that, right? So for the most part, there were some artists also in the program. But for the most part, they were culminating activities, right? So the portfolio defined, even though it was supposed to be this coherence-making activity, was primarily a product that was produced at the end of the year where students brought together their best work and say, look what I've done. Useful, great, and for many of the students, they had lots of aha moments, but it was just what it was. It was a culminating project that kept all of your best work. It seems to me it missed the pedagogical opportunities, which is how can portfolios be used as something that supports us in our learning? So that's the inquiry, that's the research, and so we decided that we wanted to use this practice because at the heart of the portfolio is that you are reflecting. And in reflecting, you're able to not just think about what it is that you're learning, you're able to connect with why you're learning it, how it connects to other things that you're learning, how it connects to your major, and how it connects to your life, right? But you only get that by this intentional reflection. So I'm actually going to begin this introduction by having you do an exercise, and then we're going to debrief the exercise with this idea that if we take the time to systematically build into our learning practices metacognition, that thinking on work, making connection, that in and of itself allows us to connect with aspects of the learning that touches who it is that we are. So I refer to it as elevating learning to the level of identity. When learning is elevated to the level of identity, it can begin to have profound transformative effects on who it is, who we are, right? So it's connecting the learning to the who. So I'll begin with, we'll do a little exercise. I'd like you to think about two experiences. One very positive experience where you felt like you learned something really, really well. And think about an experience of failure. Okay? So two experiences. And for each of them, describe what it is, what was the experience, who was there, what did you learn, what were you trying to learn, what did you learn, and what big lesson did it have for you. So I'm going to write this one on the board. So positive and negative experience. So what did you learn? What was it? So describe the context. The what? Describe the context. So what was the context for you learning it? Kind of the result of this, and insights. Insights about yourself, qualities, attributes. In other words, what does this say about who you are? Okay? So you'll have, we have 45 minutes. You'll have 5 minutes for each. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes. I'm going to pause after 5 minutes so you can switch and talk about the failure. All right? And then we're going to debrief that activity. Okay? Go ahead. So you're going to think about them for yourself. So I'll give you a few minutes to think about it. Then you're going to turn to another person and you're going to share it with each other. Okay? For 5 minutes. So first spend some time thinking about those experiences and what you're going to share in this way. Take some brief notes, and then you're going to pair up and share this out. Another minute or so. Okay, so you're gonna find a partner, and you're gonna spend 5 minutes on the first, and 5 minutes on the second. Okay? I'm gonna pause you, so you'll take turns sharing each of them, right? So you have 5 minutes to share the positive insights between the two of you, and 5 minutes to share the insights from the negative aspects of learning, and then we'll go from there, okay? Okay, so we're going to spend some time just debriefing this experience, and hopefully in the process and in the conversation, make the case for the importance of being systematic about a practice like this, okay? So some examples. We'll be willing to share some examples of powerful learning experiences and the insights that you generate from them. Yes?
My positive experience, probably one of the most positive experiences of my whole life, was the birth of my son. And I learned about childbirth. Was what the context was. My wife was pregnant with our second child, and we wanted to have a home birth. The result was my son was born at home, and the insights I gained were, numerous. Everything from breastfeeding to learning all about, anatomy and the body chemistry and everything that goes along with childbirth.
Mm-hmm. And any insights about you? How you approach the...
Well, additionally, it re-inspired a desire to study medicine and it's kind of brought me to where I am here today.
Mm-hmm. So inspiration. Some other examples, yes?
So I don't know if it's like more positive or negative, but back in when I was between like 5th grade and 6th grade, my father took me to work with him and my grandfather at the orchard picking fruit, cherries and plums mainly. And so it was waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning and working till 2 or 3. And so at that age, I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't want to do this. I don't like this. But so I told my father about that, and he set me aside. He's like, listen, he's like, if you choose to not do school anymore, he's like, it's fine. He's like, I won't get angry with you, but just know this is all you're going to be able to do. This is your future. And that scared the crap out of me because I don't like it now. I'm not going to like it later on. But that really made me see that education was important. That I had to keep going forward, and the qualities, it just built my character. So it was just a very powerful experience for me, and I keep those words that he told me in mind.
Great. So learning from negative examples. We're going to have at least enough of them for us to be able to extract some of the insights. So some other examples, yes?
Well, me and my partner, we both did sports in high school, and like something you can take from was like building character, perseverance. Like I did wrestling, and like you have to be physically tough and mentally tough. Cause like you do all that training, and like if you lose a match, it's so upsetting. But you can get back up on the pedestal if you go again and train harder, come out a better person.
Yes.
My experience is a little bit different than everyone else's, but I'm usually typically really afraid of confrontation. And so when I got to college, I started taking classes talking about like interrupting of questions and stuff. And I just learned like a lot from it, and it's kind of like been able to help me like interrupt those conversations. And like overall, I just learned from it of like the ways to go about doing things like that, or like if somebody says something that makes me feel really uncomfortable, like building my confidence to be able to like handle that like immediately, as opposed to like letting it get down the line to where they've said like really offensive things and not being able to handle it. So just kind of build me out.
Just your own sense of capacity, confidence to be able to deal with conflict. Yes.
I'm going to share a negative experience, but I was taking an engineering class called MATLAB, it's computer programming, and because of work and different circumstances, I was terrified of failing. So I bet all of us in here are like so scared of failing. So I dropped the class, and I realized after, like I actually felt worse because since I couldn't accept failure, I also wasn't like worthy of success. Like there's no way I could have succeeded in that class because I dropped it. So now I embrace failure and I dive towards it, and if I succeed, then that's great.
The insight that failure is just as useful for gaining insight. A few more, yes.
So freshman year, I participated in this It was supposed to be like it was the engineering honors program at Ohio State, and we were going to build a robot, right, in groups. So my group, we thought that the robot was supposed to run a little obstacle course, and we thought that the design parameters were pretty lame, and we wanted our robot to be better. So our robot ended up being the most over-engineered piece of robotics. And like, just to give you an example, the other groups built theirs out of plastic. That wasn't good enough for us. We were going to build it out of metal. It was too heavy for the drivetrain. It didn't even move. Like, when I say this robot was a failure, I mean, it didn't even move. So, but I really feel like I really feel like my group learned the most from that experience. You know, maybe even we learned more than the people whose robots worked just fine, because that, I hadn't really understood what engineering design was before then. Engineering design is about building to a set of parameters, and what we were doing, we ignored the parameters and went off and made up our own, and that's not engineering design. So I learned a great lesson from a really hard failure.
Awesome. That's often the most powerful insights come indeed from the failures, the kind of the coming up to the constraints of something and needing to exceed them to be able to actually do something useful. There's another hand up here.
I'll show you something talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, I didn't get to walk in my graduation, so I was about half a credit away from walking. So I didn't have my family come out. I didn't get to celebrate. It was a really bad time in my life. So from that, it just kind of awakened the motivation in me to finally tap into my potential. And I looked around and I didn't want to end up like my other friends who were setting bad examples, working dead-end jobs and selling drugs and stuff. So I definitely, it changed my character. It was definitely a character building moment where you realize that you have two ways to go.
Mm-hmm.
You're either gonna tap into your potential, or you're just gonna wonder what if for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very nice. Lots of good insights from the failure, from those counterexamples, huh? What else? Let's give us a couple more.
This might be something that people can relate to. So almost a year ago, I was fortunate enough to get a job working in a lab, and I had at that point decided, like, okay, I want to be a scientist, but I never done anything remotely close to science before. And pretty much my first 6 months there, I felt so stupid every single day because I don't know how to do anything, and I'm like learning. It's a pretty, it's a small setup, so there's a lot of like, hey, like, please go with this, and then I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna try and figure out how to do it. But I did figure it out, and I've been there for a year, and now I'm like pretty independent and can take on like new projects. It's been really confidence building, and I'm even like I just know how to do like basic lab tech stuff. But at the early on, I was like, I'm an idiot. I can't do it.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes.
Earlier this April, I lost my house to a fire, and it was a negative experience. But after that, I learned how to appreciate things, because people nowadays take everything we have for granted. They focus more on the future and the past, but you can't change that. The future's not here. A lot of people are so sensitive these days. Like, just be happy and live. So after that experience, I learned how to see things in a different perspective. I've learned how to appreciate people more, because you can really lose everything you had just because you live in unexpectedly. And it's like a positive thing for me that I've learned. I've seen everything as positive. Learn to see things positively. There's always a brighter side to something. And I've learned to give more. I've learned to, I don't know, just changed me, that experience. Yeah.
So, yes.
I was living in Portland, and I, thought I wanted to move out to the country or whatever. I just do so much better, live closer to nature and all that stuff. And I did it for a while, and it didn't work out. And I ended up back here, and it was just sort of that grass is greener somewhere else thing. And now that I'm back, I have a much greater appreciation for living here, and I don't constantly feel like, oh, I should be somewhere else. And it's kind of, a speaker earlier said, you know, about how you have to change your eyes and, you know, the landscape or whatever. And I'm just getting so much more out of it now than I did before I had that experience, you know.
By virtue of shifting the perspective.
Yeah.
Great. Yes.
It's kind of, what's your name? Kim. It's kind of similar to Kim's experience, but I did public health research in high school, and I was assigned this project with a mentor, but my mentor kind of set me off on my own. I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure, but it was more or less a learning experience. Given just a big bulk of work and said, you know, here you go, do it on your own, it's really taught me to be more of an abstract thinker and to be more clinical with my work as much as I can, and to take full responsibility for something that somebody else gives me. I don't know if that's similar, but I thought it was sharing.
So even in the sharing that you just did, and just connecting, where are the insights generated?
In the after.
Huh?
In the after.
Very often in the thinking afterwards, right? And the insights come from any number of places. Sometimes they are about the assignments, they are about the exams, but from what many of you are sharing, they're about the experiences that we have, right? About coming up short, about the failure, about the struggle, about the confronting aspects of yourself that exceed your own expectation of what you think you can bring to this task, right? And yet we, even prior conception of e-portfolios, really focused on just capturing the successes. Just focus on just capturing the successes, and not even many of the insights that you're sharing. So a portfolio, or the practices around the portfolio, is how can we connect to all of those insights that you're sharing that transcend your performance on the task given to you by the instructor. I know I don't have too much time, but I'm going to share with you a story of where I draw from insights in this. So I'm a big fan of Molière. How many of you know Molière and Molière's work? One of his really interesting work is The Would-Be Gentleman, that talks about this member of the working class that's come into a lot of money. And he wants to become a member of the aristocracy. He wants to be a learned person. He wants to be recognized as a gentleman, right? So the play is a successive representation of his experiences with the different learned people that he brings over to his house to teach him the ways of the upper crust, right? And so there is his interaction with the piano teacher and the dancer and the cook and the musician. But there's this famous scene where he's interacting with the linguist, the person who he invites to teach him about language. And he's getting excited because they're learning about the alphabet, right? Alphabet. He's getting excited about how his mouth needs to open and how the wind needs to come, how he has to shape his mouth to make the sound of O and O and the U and U, right? He's getting excited about connecting to what he has to do in order to produce sounds, right? With all of this excitement, he just wants to go on and on around this lesson. So but the time is up, and the linguist wants to leave. He says, no, just one more thing, don't go yet. I need one more big favor of you. I would like you to help me write a love note. I have fallen madly in love with someone, and I want to compose a note. And so the linguist says to him, well, okay, what do you want? You want some verses? He says, no, I don't want any verses. He says, okay, then you must want some prose. no, I don't want any prose either. The linguist is really stumped. He says, well, when we speak, we only have access to one or the other. And he says, really? You mean if I were to say, Micheline, get me my nightcap and bring me my slippers, what would that be? He says, well, that would be prose. For 40 years, I've been speaking in prose and I didn't even know it. And then he goes on to write the sonnets, and it turns out the way that he actually wanted to say it is actually better than what the linguist would have said, but the insight there is what metacognitive reflection allows us, right? The ability to connect with our capacities in a way that we're able to name them. So he wasn't just speaking, he was speaking in prose, and all of a sudden what he was doing took on a different quality, a different flavor. So this is about making the point that metacognition allows us to transform what it is that we're learning so that we can access that different flavor, so that we can connect to the inspiration that I have the capacity to do this, right? Because that's what we carry forward, is the capacity of the self is what carries forward. Not that I got the 100 on the exam, because you forget all that, right? So what you accumulate are successive connection about your own ability, right? That's what allows the self to increasingly iterate and gain the capacities that it needs in order to fully access its full intelligence. Not the accumulation of good grades, of good products, right? So metacognition, especially done with colleagues, the way you talk to each other about this, allow you to connect with your experiences in this way. And one of the things that your sharing surface is also this kind of learning is everywhere. It's not just in the syllabus, it's not just in the homework assignment, it's not just in what the instructor said, it's in the in-between spaces, the study hall, the on your way to work, the conversation that you have, right? Those are the places where the learning is contained. So how do we engage in practices that compel us to systematically do that work so that we can access those elements of ourselves that actually indeed we carry forward? Hence the portfolio, the intentional use of these strategic, periodic practices where we journal, where we share with each other, where your question allows me to connect with an aspect of this experience that I hadn't considered, and all of a sudden I reframe it. That's what's possible. And that's what makes not just useful, but critical, the use your peers. So you think that you come to this and this is kind of like a solitary, I'm just going to grind it out, right? That's how most of us are taught to, right? But I think this process surfaces the critical need for the peer interactions that you have, right? Where your classmate will say something or phrase a question in a way that allows you to derive an insight that you hadn't even considered. So, especially in the sciences, so it's the process that breaks the isolation, right, and makes relevant this interaction with your peers so that you can make those connections you can elevate the learning that level of greater identity and insight. I know I'm running out of time. But insights, thoughts. Yes?
Can you write down the story of the title?
Sure.
Sorry, thank you.
No problem. It's in English, it's would-be gentlemen. Molière was he actually was wealthy himself, but he poked fun of the aristocracy a lot. And so much of what we're trying to engage is around challenging ways that we're taught that we have to be, right? Particularly in the sciences, right? Perhaps even they can be very rigid, right? So Moliere's work goes around challenging, identifying and challenging oppressive strategies, practices. Yes?
I'm still confused about the story. So what were we talking about, the difference, like the prose and the way that they were saying it? Like that totally confused me.
Yeah, so basically he didn't understand, well, that prose and verse are different ways of expressing oneself. So when he was able to connect with the fact that what he was saying is considered by the elite, is considered by the educated as prose. This is a similar kind of move to being in a classroom and students really engaging in debate, right? But when you're able to call out this debate and say, you know, this is a form, this is what we mean by critical thinking, all of a sudden, it's not just sparring back and forth. All of a sudden, we've identified, we've named critical thinking as something that characterizes. So there's great power in thinking about what we're doing and naming it, right? So the experience that we shared, to be able to say, you know, from this, I developed perseverance. Perseverance is naming an experience that you have. Perseverance is seeing yourself doing something over and over and over and over and over again. If you only saw yourself at this descriptive level, that's all you did was do things over and over and over again, it would mean nothing. You'd be like an ant that does things over and over and over and over again, right? But if you're able to say, this experience teaches me that I can persevere. Persevere is inspirational. Persevere is something that serves you. That when you encounter a difficulty, you know that you possess the quality of perseverance that allows you to try again.
Right. So that was the moral of the story.
But I didn't
really understand what the story was.
So now that he knows that he can speak in prose, prose is something that learned people speak to. That's the language. Or prose and verse, it's elevating, it's like calling something critical thinking or intelligence or articulate, right? It's the naming of our skills allows us to say, this is something that I can get better at, right? I can get better at learning how to speak prose. I can get better at being a critical thinker. I can get better at being an ethical, right? So just the naming gives you power over it. Just the naming gives you a kind of objectivity to it. At the level of performance, you're there. You're just a worker. You're just doing things. But at the level that you're able to conceptualize what you're doing and call it something, now you have a different kind of relationship to this activity. Now you're controlling the activity. You can increase it, decrease it, but until you're able to name it, there's no way that you can increase and identify what is it that I can wield in the environment to get better at it. So this is then the value of metacognitive practices, because what metacognition, metacognitive practices invite you to do is to look again at your experiences, to look again collectively at your experiences, and to be able to call out the capacities that those experiences speak to, like perseverance, like grit, like intelligence, like resilience, right? All of those things. It's a good question. Make sense? We're out of time. Many of you then will be engaged in e-portfolio practices on your respective campuses. So perhaps use this as an invitation to take that activity seriously and really leverage its potential, right? It's not just this downstream product that you're making, it's a kind of practice, right? That allows you to look again at work that you've done and think, derive something different out of it.